So I want to talk about the most boring thing in the whole wide world that everybody feels is really boring, but it's actually kind of really important, and that's insurance. And the idea behind it is actually super simple, right? You get a whole bunch of so individually, what's going to happen is that everybody has a chance of experiencing some sort of really big event in our life, and that's pretty normal. One of us at one point is going to experience something. And if you pool it all together, if you get a great big mass of money together, everybody sort of pitches in, then the and then you pay a little fee every single year to that to have access to that little pool of money or that big pool of money. Um, that when something bad happens, that you can have insurance to that will pay off that thing that's bad. So it's really only for catastrophic events. It's really only thinking about something really nasty that happens in your life, right? So people tend to either be the sort of default that people think about is that they're underinsured, right? And a lot of people walk around this world without insurance on on them or whatever, right? Like I'll talk about the sort of things that are really important, and then people are other overinsured, right? That they just get a lot of kind of really silly insurances that are just really gimmicky and kind of rip off things, right? So if you're thinking about the basics of this, right? So I talked about this, right? So it's only for catastrophic events, or it should be only for catastrophic events, right? Like catastrophic being like if you didn't have this insurance, you would be bankrupt, or you would lose your house, or any of those kind of things, right? So it would be death. It would be some massive lawsuit that's against you, right? Like any of these kind of things that are just really weird and unusual and they don't happen that much, right? So for those things, you should have insurance and you should have sort of basic insurance and whatever that covers, right? So, with life insurance, for example, you don't need life insurance until you have dependents, right? So it doesn't matter if it's just you, there's no need for you to actually have life insurance. But if you have dependents, so somebody that's relying on you, then you should have somewhere in the sort of range of 10 to 15 times of what your total income is today that you can sort of survive off of or that you're used to. And the reason is it's sort of simple, right? Remember, I've probably talked about this on this channel. You make about 10% on in proper investing in index funds, right? 10% per year. So if you think about that, if that equates to a number of what you could do with sort of proper investing to live in perpetuity, you need about 10 times what your salary is in some form so you can properly invest it, and then you're going to take 10% every single year from that investment whenever you get that sort of lump sum from that, right? So that's a sort of catastrophic thing that only matters if you have dependents. If you don't have dependents, you're just single. You're just living. Maybe if you're living together for a long-term time, but you just start living together with somebody, you don't need life insurance. It's kind of gimmicky in any sort of way. And then the other kind that's really important is a basic health insurance. And here's where I kind of depart on a lot of what other people say. Some people say sort of have insurance just for catastrophic health insurance, but what I've realized in terms of the behavior of it, you tend to do things that um, if it doesn't feel like it's free or a slight penalty is okay, right? So if you're paying a slight co-pay on something like $20 or something like that, that's totally fine. It's a good deterrent from you from going all the time for something. But if it's a rather large deterrent or you're going to have to pay for something, that's going to come at a cost to your health, right? Because you're going to think in your head, I shouldn't go there because it's going to cost me money, and I don't want to cost that money. It turns out it's something that's really catastrophic that you have, right? Like some weird cancer that you should have went and gotten taken care of early. So you want to make sure that there's very little friction with the sort of healthcare stuff because of the way that we think about it. So that's like basically it. Now, another thing is having like a kind of like an umbrella coverage that we have. So we have house insurance. My wife and I have that. It's sort of the basic health insurance that you get that you need. Often the insurance agents, if you're with a good insurance broker, they'll sort of find the basic or average. That's all we do. And then we also have an umbrella coverage on in case somebody was to sue us, because it's actually really cheap to have this like umbrella coverage, which is a big lump sum that you're covered for just in case somebody's going to sue you. Oh, and your vehicle, insurance and things like that that are kind of basic in terms of we just do really somewhat basic insurance with it as kind of a normal middle of the road insurance with car insurance, right? And everything else you don't really need a lot of insurance for, right? So the other things that a lot of people get insurance for is like the basic repairs and things like that, and those are really gimmicky. And the reason is those are repeat purchases, right? They're not for catastrophic. So the only reason that you need insurance is for catastrophic events. That something is really, really bad. And anything else that has the structure where it's not catastrophic in the sense that you can plan for it. It's planned obsolescence. So over the course of 20 years, you're going to have to replace something. That's not the same thing. That's going to happen. So those kind of insurances tend to be rather expensive and overpriced. So dental insurance, for example, is one of those things you'll see it's overpriced. If you compare it and look at it, anything like that that is sort of repeated over and over again, those things tend to be overpriced. Now, the other kind of insurance to have is just general cash that's sitting around your basic emergency fund, which is a pool of money that's sitting there. And for an average person, it's it's supposed to be, I think, at 4 to 6 months of your savings or of your income, or sorry, of your expenses. And for the average person, it's probably going to be like, I don't know, $10,000 to $20,000 of that's just sitting there. And the reason that you have that, and it's like terrible, right? Like having that money sitting there is painful, um, because it doesn't make any money in a savings account in any sort of way, right? But um, the idea is that it's just sitting there in case something catastrophic was to happen, right? And that if it was catastrophic, you'd just be able to pay for that sort of simple thing. Like catastrophic being, um, you broke a tooth, for example. And now I mentioned like dental insurance is really terrible, right? Like it doesn't generally, if you look at the cost of it, it really doesn't work out because what they do is um, you pay it. You're basically paying what you would pay to sort of generally maintain your teeth. And so if you were to do that, right, it's going to be more expensive. And the reason more why it's more expensive to have those kind of insurances is that they put a premium on it. Um, and so what you need to think about in terms of these insurances is um, figure out a way that you can save more money and have a pool of money. So for your dental, for example, to have enough, or the possibility that if you knock out all of your teeth, I don't know, it would probably be $10,000, $15,000. I don't know. It was the same thing in when I lived in Canada as it is in the United States. Something like that, right? Some sort of arbitrary number, and just make sure that you can cover that with, basic savings account. And then you're going to do okay with that, unless your employer pays or pitches in, sort of changes the dynamic, but it generally doesn't. Dental insurance is not that good. So the idea, coming back to it, the central idea of an insurance is if there's something catastrophic that happens in your life, you have some amount that's sitting there, or you paid into something to sort of pay that out. And then you have that sort of pool that's sitting there that you can dip into, right? So insurance in any other way is generally kind of gimmicky, and they're trying to like get you to buy things that you don't necessarily need, and there's tons of things like that that you don't need. And you just kind of have to sort of look at this and weigh it and say, hey, do I actually need any of this kind of stuff? Is that, is this important? And generally, for the most part, it's not important. The only things that are really important are things like health insurance, life insurance if you have dependents like kids and a spouse, um, and even the kids is up until they're 18 or 20 years old when they can kind of maintain themselves, right? And then after that, they're on their own. Don't really need insurance at that point. It doesn't make sense, if you know, if you're doing it for your kids, right? So um, that's what you're thinking about is in the event of something catastrophic, right? And you define that catastrophic thing is and how much that is, but for me, a catastrophic event in my family would probably be anything over than I don't know, $20,000, $50,000, and so we're going to look for probably $20,000, right? Like something that you as your family could not afford just readily, right? That is not like in your day to day, and it's not easy to get to. It's not easy to save up to, right? So we don't, for all of the other things that people get insurance for, we save up for those things, and we sort of do planned obsolescence of those things. Like, people might get, you know, insurance on their house to sort of mention that, right? Where you insure the different equipment in your house and the things like that. Well, we save up for getting a new refrigerator. We'll save for, 6 months or a year or whatever, right? Like that certain amount. Now that my wife and I have, built a career a little bit, it's a little easier. So that sort of timeline is less, but that's how we sort of manage things, and we manage the finances that we actually have. And we've done this for years, and it really does pan out. If you look at just, I know nobody ever does this, right? But I'm nerdy enough to actually look at how much these things cost, and it's generally um, a lot cheaper for things that are day to day, or a major event that you're going to experience in the next year or two, right? It's cheaper for you to cash flow that. But if it's something, like I say, for us, for our family, if it would be, more than $20,000, more, maybe even $10,000, like if it was more than that, then we might consider getting an insurance for. So certainly anything that's like if it's 100, whatever, that if it's 1 million, right, we certainly would insure for that, right? Like so, or health insurance, it does get up to the hundreds of thousands, right? So we have a really good insurance in the way that we play it. Is that it basically covers everything, and we pay a deductible on it. I think it's a I can't remember. I think it's an HMO that we're part of, like a network. And I know that we kind of quote unquote overpay on the health insurance, but the reason is we can walk into any place, and we're covered, right? And we don't have to worry about it. We pay a deductible. It's like $20, $40 if you go to a specialist, $100 if you go to an emergency room, you know, and then the rest of it, is covered by insurance. We don't have to pay any extra stuff. And the reason why we do that is so that we never feel like our health is compromised in any sort of way. I know it's a really expensive proposition for some people because their employers are not helping out in any sort of way. But it's an important thing to sort of consider and think about is like how much is your health insurance or your health actually matter to you? And early on you might sort of consider it's not important, but it is. You do experience catastrophic events, right? Like there is a lot of people that below the age of 25 have experienced catastrophic health events. And catastrophic is anything from like you break your leg, right, to having a cancer scare or, being hospitalized for a month, right? Like any of those kind of things are very expensive. So we've always um, figured out a way to have health insurance. And then any of the sort of extras with healthcare we pay for. Um, and we pay for it out of pocket because it works out to be somewhat cheaper to do any of those particular things. Um, like dental, for example, right? So it really does in the long run. So the issue is that you might, so here's the problem, right? You might listen to this and you might think like, I'm going to do that. And then you start doing that in your first year, you have catastrophic events. Well, you have to be like ready for that to happen, right? You might experience catastrophic events in your first year. And this could be a rather large penalty for you. And you just have to work through that. Know that you just have to work through it. So, with dental, for example, if for us, it would have been tight if when we started out and we experienced a $10,000 bill or a $15,000 dental bill. It would have been really tough. And so we would have really had to have made a lot of sacrifices to sort of to get through that. But we would have made it, and we would have gone through it very slowly. So that's where I want you to sort of think about insurance is for catastrophic use, right? And anything else, anything where it's planned obsolescence, or you can plan for it over the next, year or two, even 5 years away, you should be thinking about how to save for it rather than using any form of insurance. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.